Well, today's talk will be something about Baba's love for us and our love for Baba. Let's talk of Baba's love for us. We can never reach that state. And his love is something unique, you know. I'm not going to talk on high subjects like God speaks and things like that. I talk from my heart today. Well, to one of the persons over here, I promised that I'd tell them something about that movie which we saw on the first day, the 1962 Sarvas. And over there was one gesture by Baba. If you had followed it, H-O-S. And that was for me. You know, this was Baba's gesture for S, and R was the other way around. So, Baba had called me on the stage there, and there was a reason behind it, and he asked me why. Well, before the Sevas began, Baba had given me certain orders to take care, medical care, of all the pilgrims that came over there, even the Westerners, the Easterners, and this and that. But there was one strict order, and that order was not to leave the marquee when Baba was on the stage. And I said, Baba, I'm really happy about this order, because, you know, if you've got to go for a medical visit when Baba's there on the stage, you don't want to do that. So really I didn't want to do that. And here Baba gave a beautiful order, and I said, fine, thank you, Baba. So next to the stage, where Baba's sitting there, I was always standing against one pole over there, in that corner, watching Baba and watching the people go up and down and this and that and that and that. And as you know, the first day it was very, very warm, and everybody was fanning themselves, and suddenly one Australian boy sitting at this corner, he suddenly fainted and fell on the ground. I don't know who that Australian boy was. So, as a medical man, naturally, I rushed to see him there. And I called a couple of volunteers and I said, come on, let's pick him up and take him out before he disturbs the whole audience over here. So we carried him across this way and took him out of the marquee. And I forgot Baba's order. And Baba's order was, don't leave the marquee when I'm on the stage. Well, I carried him to the side room, Guru Prasad, the side room over there, and tried to do my best to see that he recovers. But he didn't. So, well, I thought I'd check his pressure and things like that. So I didn't have a machine with me, so there was a tent, a medical tent between the Guru Prasad bungalow and the gate. So I started running towards that tent, and suddenly it dawned on me. I said, gosh, where am I going? Baba's order. Now, I didn't know what to do, so I ran to the tent, told another doctor, I said, please come and take care of this boy. And I rushed back and again came and stood over there exactly at that pole. And then I said, my mind started whirling, you know. I said, gosh, why did I break Baba's order? Such a simple order. And I broke that order. And, you know, I was not really enjoying the whole thing, you know, there. And suddenly Baba does this, you know, and calls me. So I go up to Baba and just stand next to him on the right. And Baba says, what are you thinking of? I said, Baba, I'm sorry I broke your order. He said, don't worry, go and stand there. So I went back and stood there. But my mind again, you know, whirling. Why did I break Baba? I was crying not externally, crying within. And after a few minutes, about say 5 minutes, Baba again did this. And I came up, and Baba says, what are you thinking of? I said, Baba, the same thing. He said, I told you don't worry about it, go and stand there. So I went and stood back again there. And this time it sort of came with a vengeance, you know. And gosh, I thought my head would split because I'm not supposed to cry. That's one of Baba's orders, never to cry. And here the suffering was intense. And the third time I didn't know what to do. And Baba suddenly come in. And the third time again I came on next to Baba, and this time Baba never asked me what I was thinking of. All he did was, he just held my when I was on Baba's right. So he held my left hand and just pushed me. And I went and stood there, and absolutely, like a tranquil lake, absolutely silent. Nothing, that thought of that disobedience, everything just disappeared. And I was really happy again to enjoy Baba's presence there and all that was going on there. And after Baba left in the evening, and then I went out for my medical rounds, and I reached home at 12 midnight. Until then, not one thought of that disobedience came. That's Baba. Well, Baba's love. I got some points down to you. There's another beautiful one. You see, Baba cares not only for his lovers, but also for those who don't know Baba even. That's his greatness. That is really his greatness. Can you hear me? I hate to talk that way. Well, one day Baba was in Mahabaleshwar, and he called Chaggan Master. Chaggan Master is one of the Baba's Mandali, and said to him, I want to work with a boy. And he gave the description of the boy, that he should be 14 years old, he should be like this, he must be that and that and that and that, and everything Baba would give the proper details. So, and he said, go and find such a boy who would stay with me for several days. Now, that's a very difficult thing to do. To bring a boy to Baba, the parents would ask, why are you taking away our boy? Naturally, it's a very difficult thing. And in Mahabaleshwar, everybody knew about Baba and knew Chaggan Master also. So, well, he thought he'd take a bus and go down to Y. Y is a little way down from Mahabaleshwar. And he started searching over there, some schools and things like that, and he couldn't find anyone. And he says, oh gosh, now what am I going to do? How can I go to Pune? Pune is such a huge city, and to get a boy over there would be more difficult than to get in Y. Y is a small town. So he was all tired and exhausted, so he goes for tea somewhere at a small stall, these tea stalls in India. And he sat down there drinking tea, and the fellow who served him the tea, that boy fit in exactly into Baba's description. So he thought, well, how can I take this boy away from here? He's working for this fellow. So, and he thought to ask the owner to give the boy to him would be very difficult. So he paid for the tea and he went out and he wanted to know what to do. He had the tact. And so he went out and there was a pan shop, a pan, the betel nut which the Indians chew there, and nearby. And he went and talked to him and said, took a pan from him and said, hello, there's that, and do you know this owner of this hotel, tea hotel, a small store? I said, yes, of course. And he said, do you know that boy? He says, we don't know, but he's been working for him since many years. He says, can I take over this boy? He says, that's a difficult job. But one thing I can tell you, that one school teacher comes every day for tea in this hotel, and he knows the manager very well. So if you could get around that teacher, he could get around the manager, and you could take the boy. So he said, well, he'll hang around, and sure enough, that teacher came in the evening, and he talked to him, and he said, could you talk this to the manager? He said, where do you want to take the boy? People take away the boys and make them do all sorts of odd things. So he says, well, I'm taking him to Meher Baba. So he said, of course I'll talk to him. So he talked to the manager, and the manager called the boy and says, would you like to go with the gentleman? He'll pay you a higher salary, he'll take care of your food, he'll take care of everything. So the boy readily agreed. So Chaggan was very happy, and he took a bus and took him back to Baba. Now, when he went back to Baba, Baba says, give him a bath first, and scrub him up properly. So he was given a bath, and while he was being given a bath, Baba was watching. And he saw that the boy had a small ulcer on his thigh. So Baba called Chaggan and said, didn't I tell you that his skin must be absolutely whole? There must be no wounds on his skin, and this boy's got an ulcer on his thigh. So Chaggan says, Baba, I didn't ask him to take out his pants there to see whether he had an ulcer inside, way up. Yeah. So how could I know then? He says, Baba. Baba says, no, this boy won't do for me. You better take him back to Meherabad. Get Padri to treat that ulcer, and when he's all right, bring him back. Can you imagine Mahabaleshwar to Ahmednagar to get an ulcer treated? And Chhagan said, yes, Baba. You know, the Mandali just did exactly what Baba said. We're coming to that later on in the time. Wow, it's 10 minutes. So difficult. Anyway, so, well, he took him down. Well, Baba said, on your way, you'll come to Pune and give this note to one Mr. Patil. Patil is a very, very old Baba lover. Very old Baba lover. So, he said, okay. So, from the bus stand, Chhagan and that boy took a Tonga. And they were going towards Patil's house. Now, on the road, you've seen lots of taps, you know, water taps. People fill from the water taps on the roadsides. You have these water taps in India where people fill up water and this and that and that. So there was a woman there were lots of people filling water there. And when the Tonga passed by, one of the women saw in the Tonga, and she saw that the boy was her son. And she shouted out, my son, my son. And Chhagan couldn't understand what's happening. And there the whole crowd, you know, people surrounded the Tonga and said, you taking away her son. And he thought he is in for a big beating, you know. And he says, no, I'm not taking away the son. He said, this is my son. And the mother, you know, took hold of that son and embraced him. My son, I haven't seen you for so many years now. Where have you been all these years? And it was such a happy union. But Chhagan was afraid, now what am I going to do? I'm supposed to take him to Meherabad to cure that ulcer. And by the time that Patil comes around there, you know, that's Baba times everything perfectly. And Patil comes there, and he's a well-known person in Pune, so he explains to the people that this man is not the type that will take away your son or anything like that. And everything was settled, and a happy union between the mother and the son. So you see, all this was done in order to unite the son with the mother. This is Baba's greatness. That mother never knew anything about Baba. That's Baba's Leela. During my visits to Baba centers in India, I meet a lot of people, and a lot of people tell me lots of Baba stories and all. And one such thing touched my heart so much. And that was, he was the dean of a big college. And he said, one day he got a letter. He's from some small village, but working for a big college in a big city. And Jabalpur, that's the city. So he's working there, and he gets a letter, a postcard, you know, a small postcard from a friend of his, a friend, not a friend exactly, but somebody from his home village. And the address mentioned on that was some prison. So the postcard had come from some prison. And he read that thing, and it said, the whole detail was there. And he knew the person, you know, casually. A small village, everybody knows everyone there. So it was written in there that he had murdered somebody. And he had been caught by the police, and trial had taken place, and the sentence was to be hanged by the neck until death. That is the sentence. So he appealed to the higher courts, and then he went right up to the Supreme Court. But they all said no, the sentence remains. Then finally he did an appeal to the president, you know. It's called a mercy appeal. And the president ruled out the whole thing. He read the whole case and he said, no, this man must be hanged. So now there were about 10 days more for that hanging to be taken place. And he was just frantic. What shall I do now? There's no hope for me. So suddenly he thought of this man, this Baba lover. And he wrote to him, he said, please appeal on my behalf to Baba to save me. I've got 10 days more. And this man, the dean, read that postcard and says, now what am I going to do? How am I going to appeal to Baba? Baba's no longer in the body even. So all he did was he sent a picture of Baba to him and said, I can't do anything more, but Baba is God in human form and he's all merciful. He's really compassionate. Take his name till the end. That's all that he wrote. Well, when the picture arrived there in the jail, he looked at the picture and began to cry, and there were 8 more days for the sentence to be. So he kept on crying and taking Baba's name 24. He couldn't sleep. A man who's condemned to death, he can't sleep, I know. So tomorrow morning he was to be hanged. And till tonight, nothing happened. Just Baba's name he was taking constantly. Early morning, the jailer would come and take him off for the hanging sentence. And the jailer comes in the morning, and this fellow's all frightened. Baba, what am I going to do now? They're going to kill me. And do you know what the jailer says? There's an order from the Prime Minister that today is Gandhi's centenary, 100 years of Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi ji, you know. And all those who are to be hanged today are to be given a life sentence. Really wonderful how Baba works. Well, one Baba came to him and he offered something to Baba. It was a packet. And Baba said, what's in this packet? So he said, Baba, it's some money inside it. And Baba said, I can't take money. I never touch money. You saw in the movie yesterday, only when he has to give to the poor or to the mosque, he takes hold of the money and just passes it on. So Baba said, I don't want this money, just take it away. And that man insisted, no, Baba, with your grace, I've earned a lot of money. And it was a huge big pack of wide of notes, you know. And he was just as persistent as Baba was persistent to take it back. He said, Baba, I'm not taking this. You can do what you like with this. Ultimately, the good old Erich came into it. And Baba gave it to him and said, you better keep it with you. And when you feel that some person deserves it, just give it away. The whole big bundle of notes. So Erich says, golly, where am I going to leave Baba and go? That I can get a chance to give it to someone. It is impossible. Erich is always with Baba. Well, 6 months passed. And Erich had that big packet in his pocket all the time, and didn't know what to do. And then one day Baba sends him from Merzad to Pune for some work. And he goes there for his work, and it's very hot in the afternoon. And he says, oh, let's have a drink. So he goes to a small shop where they give this sugarcane juice. It's quite cheap there. And so he was drinking that. And while he was drinking that, another gentleman who had just finished his drink went up to pay money there at the counter. And he is talking to the boss over there and says, oh, what a world this is. Those who are really honest, you know, they have to suffer, and there's no justice in this world, and God is not caring for the honest people, and this and that. See what happened to that man and how he's suffering today, and this and that and that. And Erich had his ears pricked up, you know, listening to this conversation. So when he went to pay his money, well, he asked, whom are you talking about? Well, he said, oh, forget it. This world is so corrupt, and this and that and that. But please tell me whom you were talking about. So the manager says that, well, it's about a corporator who was in the corporation. He was so honest that he wouldn't let the others cheat. And you know, I was sad to say there's a lot of corruption in India. I don't know about here. So, a lot of corruption, really. It's just hell to stay there. Anyway, we have to stay there. So, can't be helped. So, well, he said that this man was a corporator on a very high post and all that. And then the people who wanted to make money out of the corporation, you know, they put some false allegations against him, and he was ultimately demoted. And he had to take up a small job at an octroi post. I don't know what that means over here. Just when goods come into the city, well, they are taxed by the corporation. So that's called an octroi post over there. So he was put on that on a very small salary. And he couldn't even make ends meet. So Erich took the address of that gentleman and he went to his house. And his wife said, Erich of that time used to dress in a short khaki pant and a white shirt and the black cap you saw in the movie yesterday. So the wife of that gentleman thought he was a policeman. He said, what have you come here for? He said, no, I want to meet so-and-so. She says, well, he's not here. He leaves home in the morning at 7 o'clock, comes in the evening at 7 o'clock. So if you want to see him, you come either just before 7 in the morning or come after 7 in the evening. So next morning, early morning, Erich goes right down to that house, and that man is about to leave the house with a cycle. And he says, well, who are you? He says, well, I've brought a gift from my elder brother. Baba's name is never disclosed. I remember when we used to also go to give money to people, we never disclosed who was giving that money. So he says, but who's your elder brother? How does he know me? He says, don't bother about that, but I want to give it to you. And one of Baba's orders to us, remember I used to do it also, before we'd give the money, when Baba was going to give money, Baba would bow to us, then we would have to go and bow to that gentleman, so that Baba's bow indirectly is passed on to that man. So Erich, before giving that pass, normally nobody in India would allow anyone to put his head on the feet. So Erich quickly lit, and bowed down, put his head on that man's feet, and then gave that wad of notes. And that man opened, and there were 5,000 rupees in it. Gosh, that was like a thunderbolt to that man. It was something from the blues that came out. And he began to cry and he says, but, there's no buts about it, you just take it. And then he says, last night I had cried all night and I had decided that God doesn't think of us, that I'm such an honest person, but God is not thinking of me. I can't make my ends meet. I got 2 daughters to be married and they're in just torn clothes. What is the use of living like this? And in the morning I had decided to commit suicide today. But now I feel God has heard my prayer. Shall I tell you something about a master? This time seems to be going so fast. It's 20 minutes. Well, there's once Baba was traveling from Bombay to Delhi. I go fast now. So I want to put in as many things as I can, And, normally Baba would say, ask the other passengers, where are they from, and this and that, and they ask the other passenger, and then Baba would ask them to ask whether there are any mosques in their town. So one of the passengers did say that at Bharatpur, that's a station a little before Delhi, coming from Bombay, that in Bharatpur there is a mosque, and he's a very highly advanced soul, and he lives very near the station, and he's living with one of the railway officials. But there's one thing about that man. He says, don't go in dirty clothes. You've got to have a bath and put on clean clothes before you go to him, otherwise he'll hammer you. So instead of going to Delhi, Baba and the party got off at Bharatpur to contact this man. They got into a Tonga, and the Tonga, they told him, is there a mosque named so-and-so? So he said, yes, we all know him. He's a great saint, So they went there. And, in the dirty third-class coach that they had come in, they were full of dust and dirty as anything. And travel in a third-class coach, only one who's experienced that knows what it is in India. So they didn't have any baths or anything like that, and they just went to that house. And can you imagine, when they reached the gate of that house, that saint or that mosque was standing on the door as if waiting for Baba. So Baba came inside and the Mandali entered after him, and then they embraced each other, and then as usual Baba would sit in a quiet room, in a separate room, and nobody would know what's happening in that room. So the devotees of that mosque, they asked Mandali, who are you people and who's that man who's gone inside there? Because from the morning, this must has been saying, clean the house, wash it up, clean up everything. There's somebody great coming today and this and that. And we're really wondering, and then there's one thing that he never allows anyone who's dirty, and you people are filthy. And you coming to see this must, and he's embraced him and he's gone into that room. What's he doing in that room there? They said, we don't know, he's our elder brother. We don't know what's happening now. Soon Baba came outside and he left. And the Mandali left after him, not disclosing Baba's identity. And when Baba was about to get into the Tonga, the Bast asked his devotees and says, do you know who that man is? They said, no. He said, if he just blows, he can crack the whole world. That much power he's got. Can you imagine? We with Baba could never imagine these musts. They could, you saw in the movie yesterday, how they were awakened and they could see Baba, that he's really God in human form, really. We could never imagine that when we were at Baba. Wow. Finish. 30 minutes. There's 5 minutes more. Oh my God. I promised somebody to tell somebody, Anthony, I think it was, yes, about Dr. Brisman. And Dr. Brisman was the man, was a doctor in Ahmednagar, you know about him. And he was also in charge of the church over there. And his wife would every Sunday come to one Baba lover's house, that was Girja, what's his name, Kildani, that's right. Kildani was a judge over there in Ahmednagar, and she was very friendly with his wife. So every Sunday she'd spend the Sunday there and, talk about this and that and that, and then finally talk about Christ. And said, you must become a Christian, you must become, this is the routine with Christians. So, yeah, that's the fact. So, every Sunday she'd be pestered by this lady, that you become a Christian, only then you can enter the kingdom of God. This is the typical sentence. So, she would say, I've got Baba with me, I don't want to bother about all this. And then finally one day she said, I'm already a Christian. Now what do you want me to say? So she says, come along with me, my husband will baptize you. And she says, I'm not coming there to the church. You first come to Baba, then I'll come to the church. And then that was the day when that lady went away, Mrs. Brisman, that she just thought of Baba and says, Baba, relieve me from this woman now. I got tired of her. It's too much, now it's come. I can't bear it anymore. So the next Sunday, that lady comes on a cycle, fast, and says, Girja, I want to give you some very good news, very good news. She said, what's happened? But first become a Christian, then I'll tell you the news. She says, gosh, I can't do that. And then she went away. And the next Sunday again she comes. She says, I must tell you what I saw. And she saw in a dream Christ. Mrs. Brisman saw Christ in a dream, and Christ said to her, don't be after Girja, because she is coming through Meher Baba to me. You get that? Got a couple of minutes more. This is Baba's love for us. Now, let me try and tell you something about our love for Baba. And you see, in the world there are so many paths leading to God. We don't have to traverse any path. There's a path of karma, there's a path of yoga, and this and that and all that stuff. We don't have to do anything like that, because we've got God with us. We don't have to follow any path. It's something like, just try and imagine now, just imagine this, that Baba sitting in Meherazad in the Mandali hall on that chair. And here you are in Australia and you say, come on, let's go to meet Baba. So you go from here to Brisbane or wherever you have to and catch a plane, and all along you're seeing things, you're eating, you're drinking, you're doing this, doing that, arriving at Bombay, again taking a train or a bus or something and going along there. And finally when you come on that small road, that private road leading into Meherazad, We were so happy. Oh, we are going to see Baba. We're going to see Baba now. And finally, when you enter over there, that's your God with you. So the path for Baba lovers follows us. There is no path for us. We've already got the goal with us. All that we've got to do is just hold on to Baba now and to become one with Him. That's all that we got to do. So we don't have to go searching in mountains and sadhus and yogis and anywhere else. Just we got Baba. So now that we come into the Manali hall, we've seen God in front of us. Now what do? So Baba says, hold on to my daman, don't leave my daman. And I remember one day he called me and said, come here. And he said, hold my daman, hold it tight, firm, straight firm. And then he says, even if your hands are cut off from here, don't leave my daman. Which means that in times of adversity, in times of suffering, don't leave Baba's daman. Keep holding to that daman till the end. And then I remember once we were in Pune, and one Iranian gentleman comes and sits near Baba. And though he was sitting in front of Baba, he was not exactly there. It's 30 minutes. 2 minutes. I'll do 3 minutes more. If you would, please. 2 or 3 minutes more. So that Iranian gentleman comes there and says, he just sits there, he's sitting in front of Baba, but it is still, there doesn't know anything about. He knows Baba. And Baba says, what are you thinking of? He says, Baba, the same thing. So Baba tells us, he says, do you know what he's thinking of? When will I get married? So every day he comes here and he thinks the same thing, Baba, when will I get married? So Baba said, if anyone leaves his every worry to me, I'll take care of it. And that was a time when a lady from Pakistan was there. And her son had a very bad habit of twitching, his face, like that. And they had tried all sorts of medicines, and they had tried everything, even been to a psychiatrist, and still nothing at all. And so she mentally, actually it was indirectly meant for her. So she thinks in her mind, Baba, I leave my son to you entirely now. Finished. That's it. I'll never worry about him now. And immediately Baba turns to that boy and says, he was sitting there. I said, why do you twitch like this? He said, Baba, I don't know, it just comes, His Baba says, don't do it again. And then of course Baba told us a very nice story there, but I don't want to say it because I want to finish my talk. And then we started playing cards. And during the game of cards, again that boy twitched, like that. And Baba said, I told you not to do it. And that was the last time he twitched. So now we are already in Mehersad, holding on to Baba's daman till the very end, And now what do? How do we love Baba? Well, Baba's given us lots of ways to love Baba. He says, when somebody asked Baba, how do I love you, Baba? So he said, when you got married, did you ask somebody how you love your wife? No, it just came. It's a constant remembrance. So constant remembrance is what is important. So try and remember Baba all the time, more and more and more and more. And then he says, your mind gets tired, so then read Baba books. Or talk to other Baba lovers. These are different ways by which you can constantly remember Baba. Yesterday Henry was stressing on this point to remember Baba. So he says, read Baba books. Go to places where Baba had been, like Mehersad, Meherabad, this, that, where you are in that atmosphere. So then you think of Baba more and more. So what we've got to do now is hold on to Baba's daman till the end and think of him more and more and more. And not only think of Baba as that physical form, but try, when we say the Parvatikar prayer, there's one sentence in that, you are in everything and you are also beyond everything. So in everything, Baba is everywhere. He's everywhere, in every person, in everything that you see, every flower, every plant, every seed, everything that you see, everything that you do in your work, your office, your everything, your children, everything possible, it's Baba and nobody else. So try and think of Baba in that way, that everything reminds you of Baba. And when you can think in these terms, constantly from morning to night. It's not that you got to leave work and leave your job and leave your family. No, you to be here. You don't have to become like a mustard, what we saw in the movie yesterday. He's lost in the heavens. We don't want to get lost in the heavens. We got to be here and work for Baba. So constantly let everything, the mic, the this, the that, everything remind you of Baba every minute of your life, so that you think less and less of yourself and more of Baba. Then you'll become like the surgeon's knife, you know. The surgeon uses the knife for operations. It's the knife who does the work, but actually it's the surgeon behind. So you will become like one of the Mandli. The Mandli was, what were they? They were just the knife of the surgeon. Whatever Baba did, they did. Whatever he said, they did it. They never thought of anything like that. So it's a complete obedience. It's a complete surrenderness to Baba. So similarly, we got to do that now. And here, not necessarily you got to sit in Mehrabad or Mirzad. Baba's here with us everywhere. So if we can also think of Baba more and less of ourselves, we'll have become just like the Mandli. And so you got a chance to become one of the Mandli. The Mandli doesn't mean people sitting in Mirzad or Mehrabad. I remember one of us over here is one of the Mandli. And Baba had told Eeret, he's one of the Mandli. And Eeret said, Baba, but he doesn't stay with us. Baba says, that's not the point. One who loves me, who obeys me, who surrenders to me, he's one of my Mandli. Whether he's with me or somewhere out there, abroad, it doesn't matter. So you can become the Mandli also by becoming, thinking less and less of yourself and more of Baba constantly from morning to night. By thinking that Baba is in everything, then he will use you as an instrument to do his work. And when the time comes, he'll just pull you out and says, okay, that's the end of it. And you become one with him. So the six-plane man, he actually has the feeling of seeing God everywhere. And that's what we got to practice. If we can feel that Baba is in everyone, do you think you can tell lies to anybody? Do you think you can cheat anyone? You can't. You love everyone. And life will be really worth living. So from today, try and love Baba in everyone and in everything. He's there. He's God in human form. Jai Baba.